That's fine. I started
What the hell
recording.
was that?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, that sums up our interview with Jason.
All right, and that was thanks for having me, guys.
Hi, all right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hobby Night School. We are very honored to have not Jason from DCI joining us tonight. We're going to talk all things grading, the hobby, maybe some shipping, and how bad the Cardinals actually suck. So thank you so much for joining us today. And why don't we have you talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, awesome. First of all, thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. I am a huge supporter of y'all's channel, whether it be on YouTube or Drip or Loop or ISO or Instagram or Twitter. And so I'm happy to kind of do a little collaboration because I know you guys support us as well. So not only me, but yeah, that's prime example. And you just had to bring up the Cardinals in the intro there, but just to kind of give a little bit of a background for myself, personal collection, I started collecting around 2012, 2013, collected Nolan Arenado and was able to do kind of well when on most of his bigger stuff when the kind of pandemic hit, turned that into a business kind of like yourself, and have been strictly 100% hobby and cards in the form of DCI grading since 2019. So going on 4 years now, 3.5, 4 years, and love every minute of it. Still actively collect. I rip a lot of wax. I sell a lot of cards. I love going to shows and just being in part of the community. And that's really, where I found my niche. So I'm happy to be here. Thank y'all.
Part of the community is an understatement. You are legitimately the Kevin Bacon of the hobby because you are just two connections away from everybody. And I'm not one to name drop, but I'm loosely connected to you with anybody that I interact with in the hobby.
Well, thank you, first of all. Second of all, I have found that your network is right. People always say it's all about who you know. It's all about who you know. Your network will always allow you, whether you're running a business, providing a service, whatever it may be, your network is going to provide you that stability, right? You have to have those people that you can count on when you need to make a sale or you need to, when shit's kind of hitting the fan. Everybody can kind of do business, I think, on Twitter, on Instagram with the general public, whether it's an auction or eBay and stuff like that. If you need liquidity, you're probably not going to get what you need, right? But there's a way to get cash out of cards. A lot of times I just try to avoid the buying and selling at 70, 80% to kind of flip. You know what I mean? I'm comfortable creating margins in grading and operating the hobby that way. And so I really like to just make fair deals, build return customers, and kind of, really build that network to, you never know later on down the line, whether I'm in the hobby or not, one of those connections can really set you up for your next career or just whatever it may be,
I think that's a really good point. And I don't know what your background is, but my background in infrastructure was the ROI is truly the relationship. And it's not on one deal. You know what it is? It's on the next 50 deals that all friction's been removed, where some of the back and forth, where you're dealing with somebody and you know what it is. And without hesitation, the value when I know that, let's say I get a Peyton Manning card and I know it's right up Drake's alley and we don't even have to talk. I've gotten that way with Breaking Wax and some of the people, some of the members of the Alliance, they ask for a card. I just send it. We don't even talk numbers. You want it? It's, because I know you're going to make me whole, or on the next time around, you're going to take care of me. And so I wish more people understood that. Maybe they have to see a couple wins. In wins, I mean, a transaction be positive both ways.
For sure.
For to continue to build that up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, it all depends, right? If you are somebody who operates in the hobby, and I'm not this way, I'm not the negotiator. I'm not the strong arm like you are. Jeremy goes around and buys at shows, and I've seen Courtney as well. Courtney like cleaned out one of my friends at the Dallas show that we met at. And he's still hurting from that. But anyways, I'm not that guy, right? So I go around, I know what I'm into my stuff for, and I either say yes or no, like based on your offer, if I can take that or not. Like I know it works for me, and if it doesn't work, it's no hard feelings, but like I'm not going to sell you the card. If it works, great. I'm not going to try to squeeze 100% or 110%, like breaking record comps, you know what I mean, on every card. It just isn't an effective liquid way to run my business. A lot of that has kind of changed over time too. During the pandemic, I was able to buy singles even at 100% comps raw, right? Nobody was really grading cards. I had been grading cards for a while and could kind of use that to my advantage, where I was fine to pay 100 to 110% because I trusted my ability to grade to create that margin, which putting stuff on the secondary margin allowed me to profit, right? Now it's a little bit different. I kind of have to source clean raw inventory from ripping wax, which is really where I find the fun of the hobby, as kind of like the strategy of, okay, what's the floor on this product? What's the ceiling on this product? Like it may not be the sexiest product on the market, like WNBA Prism versus NBA Prism, or, you know, NASCAR products, National Treasures versus NFL National Treasures. But at the end of the day, like I found there's more people willing to buy singles of those products than there are people willing to rip bulk and like grade it and put it out on the market. And so I haven't had a liquidity issue at all since making that change. But it's really one of those things where I don't want to beat somebody up over a card they want and then never be able to sell it again to them again, or their friend group again, or whatever, because you never know, you know, your interaction with somebody, where that's going to continue to, like, how that, you know what I mean? They could go tell their buddy or their boss, or, you know, talk about you on some other podcast or something like that. And then you just never know. And in this hobby, your reputation really is everything.
So yeah, we had two experiences. One was we had somebody reach out who wanted to do a deal based on things other people had told them about dealing with Courtney and myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently at Shipshawana on the trade night, a young looking kid, unassuming kid, came up and he bought his mom like a $5 card.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give my mom a card. And he was like incredibly friendly, nice interaction. He asked about a couple cards, and, you know, you like, I didn't think anything of it. I gave him a price, and he's like, well, what if I took them both? Can you help me out, or can you work with me? And I said, sure.
For sure.
This kid ended up probably spending $3,000 to $4,000 at our table. Awesome. And it was like, he knew he could come directly to us. We had a very frank conversation, because I'm the same way. I don't want to haggle.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back and forth. I just, like, if it works, I have no problem leaving meat on the bone for you. Like, right. You know, take care of me next time. And so, like, I try to preach that to people as much as possible. And people slide in the DMs and they're like, well, how do you do it? And I actually want to talk about, like, system and process, because you're refining what you're doing. But just having those sort of interactions with people and building your network. What is it? Your network is your net worth.
100%.
True value in that. Like, you already have an exit strategy when you buy the card, because you know, like, hey, you're going to grading, and then you'll distribute it, whether it's, you know, eBay, Drip, ISO, or, hey, I've got the perfect end user. You know, I'm
100%.
52 manual. You know, Jason from DCI is buying those up.
Yeah, just the authentic, the altered ones. Not even that. Man, those are sweet. We do get some really cool stuff in at DCI, and actually, not to brag, but a little shameless self-promotion. Today, we got our first, like, from one of our really local main supporters. He's a breaker locally. Dropped off our first ever 1,000 card submission for slabs.
Wow.
From one customer. So we have one customer who just dropped off today 1,000 cards, which for me is, you know, in the grading space, the only thing that is going to bring that premium is reputation. And for him, you know, for our customers who have, you know, been return customers since day one, who experienced kind of our growth through RCR to the slab, to be able to exist in the hobby today and kind of carve that niche out to where the margin still makes sense, and he can use our reputation that we've built, you know what I mean? That's only going to continue to get stronger in the open market to run his business. And that was something that was really cool to see, because, I mean, a lot of times we do get big bulk orders, 50 to 150 cards, never anything this big. And that was the first time really today it really hit me that like, hey, we're going to help other people, not only help, we kind of gone from helping people in the hobby to now, okay, we can actually help other people's businesses in the hobby to then go and help, every collector in the hobby. So it's something that was really cool to see. It just was coincidentally happened this morning. I got there today and we had this gigantic black suitcase. I was like, this is awesome. But it kind of all goes back to reputation, right? And how we were able to build the grading scale over time was transparency and honesty and like just good business practice. And I hope that if anybody listening has done business with DCI, they'll agree. Whether it's, the RCR service, the slab service, something that we strive to do is put that value back into the hands of the collector. And this was a great example of that today.
That's really cool. The first time that I ever interacted with you guys was at the National 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were set up right across from the Zero Cool booth thing.
Yes.
And I spent a large portion of my time at that booth.
It was awesome.
It was
really awesome. Yeah.
So I was watching people come up and get like the raw card reviews done, which was super cool. And I hadn't personally seen anyone doing that before. And because I'm always like, I grade them or whatever. I never watched anyone like, come up with their card, be like, oh, I want a raw. And like, so they were bringing it over and showing everyone in line. It was a really great spot because people were just trapped there for hours. So we were all talking with you guys. And one of the people who worked for you was walking around like, hey, if you show us that you're following us on Instagram, we'll give you a t-shirt. And I am a t-shirt whore. I have a huge hobby t-shirt collection. This is a thing now. I probably have hundreds. It's ridiculous.
I remember you coming to the booth and making a big deal about the t-shirt.
I wanted a t-shirt and I'm like, here, look. And then now I have the t-shirt. So
that's awesome.
It's worked out because we weren't really super like into doing the podcast now, but I can jump on with people. Like I was on Cousins Collectibles. I had a Cousins Collectibles t-shirt. So
that's awesome.
It's such a fun thing, but you guys were really like putting yourself out there at that one. And that's when I started following you and then kind of watching what you guys were doing. And I was really impressed. I'm like, wow, these guys are like, I felt like you guys were doing it because you see a lot of, card grading companies come and go, and you guys have been like solid this whole time. And I was really impressed. I've been impressed with everything I've seen.
Well, thank you. I think to touch on that a little bit as far as like the ups and downs of the hobby, right? Both Brad and I, the owner, Bradley Crenshaw, and I, do this and have been in the hobby prior to the pandemic, and like we're doing this prior, and saw the need. Like we were at first, we did not start as a grading company, if that makes sense. When Brad and I got together at first, we wanted to do something full-time in the hobby. He had a huge collection and I was leaving the restaurant industry, and kind of had all this knowledge in my personal stuff as well, and was really looking for, I didn't really have the money to fund, a business full time. And so we kind of linked together, and all I was doing for the first probably 3 months of DCI was sorting dollar box cards and driving them around Texas and Oklahoma and just setting up at shows and letting people pick. I would go to our local breaker and I'd buy all of his vet base commons for 5 cents a piece. And I'd buy all of his rookie base for 25 cents a piece. And I'd drive it back to the office. I'd sleeve and top load it. I'd sticker every top loader, and we'd drive to Oklahoma and sell them all for like $1 to $5 a piece. And literally, I can't tell you how many, like probably 10 straight weekends we were at shows doing that. And then, over time it evolved into, okay, hey, maybe we should pick through some of this stuff, let's send some off to grading. We're doing well on, our dollar stuff. And we were both independently grading our own things at the time. And we were like, well, we have all this inventory anyways. We might as well just get a group account going, right? Get a better margin, send off some of the mid-level stuff and all the high-level stuff. And that way we can just kind of scale the business through grading and the dollar box, setting up at shows, things like that. So basically we did that for the first year, up until basically we were submitting so many cards for ourselves that we were like, why are we out buying all of these cards, right? Like it's costing us so much cash on the front end to buy all these high-end raw cards. Like, and we were making good money to grade them and flip them, right? The market was different back then. You could kill if you were grading, right? And so like we were like, okay, it doesn't really make sense for us to go spend all this capital up front on all this raw stuff if we don't really need to. These cards already exist in other people's collections. We already have this great PSA account. Let's just start a group submission company. All right. So that's how we started the group submission company, right? It just became hey, we've got a great thing. Like we're going to, offer this price, mark it up a couple. We'll start doing raw review for our customers who drop off cards. Like if you drop off a stack of 10, I'm going to pull out everything that's a 9 and above, and we can send those off for you. And we kind of track them in like a Google sheet. That is what allowed us to then kind of offer the grading scale based on like our data from those group submissions, right? So at one point we had sent like 50,000 cards to PSA Beckett SGC in like a year. And we had taken that, data and like across each grading company said like, hey, 92 Beckett, 90% PSA, like 94% SGC. How do we market this into a service that isn't gonna, basically this was right at the time the grading companies were shut down as well. So they were shutting down. The only option was $100 a card or more. We were like, okay, there's got to be another option that's quick turnaround. It's still an expert review kind of from, our group submitter, our head grader, our grading team. And that's what kind of led to the RCR, which we didn't invent. We were not the first RCR company. Beckett actually was probably the first RCR. So I know a lot of people are really familiar with that. And so when we kind of launched the DCI RCR product, it really met the need in the market at the time for a cheap and quick turnaround, like same day turnaround, quick option with an expert review. You know what I mean? That has some kind of credibility behind it, right? Like that reputation that we just talked about is what allowed us to then take the RCR, become the best RCR company there is to this day, and backtrack 6 months, launch a hard encapsulation slab for another option in the market, which is really exciting. But basically what I was getting at is it all starts with reputation.
That's awesome. So last year at the National, we were perusing. No, you know what? It wasn't at the National. It was at the Midwest Monster or whatever. The last one we went to in Chicago, big show. So we're walking around, and Jeremy was looking at this guy's booth, and he was like interested in one of his cards. And I'm like walking up, and I looked at all the guys' cards, and they were all like insanely overpriced. But I'm like, you can negotiate with people. These shows, these tables are expensive. People sometimes mark their cards up just because
right,
it's expensive, and they're trying to make their money back. I get that. I get it. And then I looked at the dealer, and he was the same guy that had ripped my son off like 2 years prior at the National in Chicago. And I was like, there is no way. I don't care if this was a Grail card.
Right. And it's a great deal. Right.
I don't care. I'm not buying a card from this guy. I want nothing to do with him. And we left. And that's the kind of thing where like, when you rubs, and Jeremy was looking at like a $2,000 card, and this guy was like really talking it up, and they were like actively negotiating. And Jeremy, we never make huge purchases, especially without talking to each other. And unless, I've actually, we both have done it before, but we try really hard not to. We typically will discuss a big purchase. So we'll walk away and then go back if we're interested in a card. But when we took a step away so we could kind of talk about it, I'm like, we're not buying that. He's like, why? You think it's a bad deal? I'm like, I don't care if it's a great deal. I'm never buying a card from this guy.
From that
Like,
guy,
never
right.
give him my money. I'm like, anyone who will scam a kid is not somebody that I want to deal with, you know? So
100%.
that
And like,
guy will
again,
never give our business. And he doesn't know
he has no idea, right?
out on a $2,000 deal
Right.
because, you know, he made $15 off my kid.
Right.
He sold my kid a $5 card for $20 2 years ago and like totally ripped him off.
Well, and what's funny, one of my favorite things just being in the space as the head of grading for DCI, right, is, and knowing people in the hobby, is oftentimes at shows, people will pull a big card or they'll buy a big card and they'll say, hey dude, can you just like bump my order up? I'll give you $10. Like, you'll give me how much? Like, you'll give me $10, or they'll just be like, hey, can I give you this to put a 10 on? Like, can you sticker this a 10? You know what I mean? Can you sticker it a 10 so I can flip it today? I was like, you think my reputation is worth how much? You know what I mean? $10. Like, that's what we charge per card. It's like, give me a break, bro. Like, get out of here. And I will say, just before we got started, I asked Jeremy if he was going to throw me any softballs questions, and he said, you know, a great answer. He said, no, we think of you like family. You're like a friend family. Like, you're going to get the hardest questions. You're going to get, you know, the true, you know, the honesty. And that's how business should be done. Like, your friends shouldn't be asking you for, you know, easy questions or like a discount. Like, they should be the ones paying full price and helping your business.
And you should support your friends like 100%. You should support celebrities you don't know.
And
like,
you know what? And if you do, it'll pay off in the long run. Like, when I hopped into your WWE Revolution break and I nailed that Booker T auto to number 99.
Five time.
I mean, come on. That's going to look awesome, isn't it? In a DCI slab?
It's gonna. You better post a picture of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And then tag us.
I'm waiting on the mail day.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I took very good care of that card. It should definitely get a really good grade because I was so careful with it. We'll
Venmo you $10 if you make sure it gets.
Give us $10.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I do want to say something before we move on. Our frustration with Steven has all the tools in the world.
Yes.
So we're like, obviously, you know, you'd rather have your kid make a mistake on a $5-10 card as opposed to, you know, adults who sometimes, you know, overextend themselves or over leverage themselves because they're unfamiliar. The grope or the gripe is the way we operate in the hobby is you look out for the kids. You make sure kids win. You make sure you build them up so they have a good experience to come back. 100%. So like, I want to be clear. We're not like butthurt that our kid, something happened. Like, it doesn't matter.
No, we weren't even with him. He could have been any kid wandering around.
It's
the fact that I know that this happened.
100%.
Exactly.
But I'm sure you guys are probably like me. We've got a great community at my LCS, my local card shop, that, you know, there are a lot of, and fortunately in Dallas, there's a lot of really good hobby infrastructure, a lot of really high-end collectors, and just a big population of collectors, Paninis here, Fanatics here, Beckett, blah, blah, blah. There's a huge conglomerate of children now that it's summertime. From the second the door opens at 11 o'clock until they close at 7, that are in that card shop all day long.
You love to see it.
I'll tell you what, to be a kid in a card shop is the way to make money these days, because if there's stuff going on, like giving kids, you know, extra silver prisms or red weight, you know, the non-numbered stuff or the vet color, it makes their day like immensely, right? It's the coolest thing that's ever happened to them. And really, you're only losing out on a couple bucks, but in the long run, especially in the grading space, that's obviously dominated by PSA, right? Our focus is not to like change collectors away from, you know, like turn collectors away from PSA necessarily. It's to like, everyone in the hobby now already knows PSA. That is the end all be all for grading on the secondary market, right? And our focus is that next generation, by the time that they have expendable income and can grade their cards and want to support a grading company, they're going to know, hey, Jason used to hang out at the shop with us, you know, all the time, or Bradley used to be at at the shows, walking around doing deals with us, handing out packs and stuff like that. So we understand that as like a long-term marketing play, is that it's all about the kids. And if you want to be successful, it's the next generation that'll probably keep you successful.
Well, I'm sure, Beckett never thought PSA was going to overtake them. I mean, everyone acts like PSA has always been the number one.
And it's happened in my lifetime, in the last 10 years. So, in my hobby lifetime, I'll say. I'm older than 10.
So you behave younger than 10, my friend.
I was going to say that, but.
So we're big proponents of, I think competition's a good thing. And
100%.
for the life of me, I can understand it, but I don't understand why people have such hatred for upstart businesses or the underdog or somebody else trying to make it, especially if they're doing it the right way. To us, as the consumer, because we are hobbyists, if I have 10 grading options, that's incredible, because these people are going to fight. They're going to give me the best price point. They're going to be the best turnaround. They're going to give me the best customer service.
Just to get your business.
And that's just not grading. I mean, that's everything. That's from consignment to, it forces everybody to level up. So I'll never understand why there's this backlash when somebody tries to come up. Now, side note, I do understand, if all my money's in PSA slabs, it doesn't behoove me to have another slab become the premier slab because you're cutting into my money.
100%. I totally get that as well. Financially, take the financial side away from it. That it's really been interesting to see. And there's really I don't really have a clear answer for why, at the end of the day, all that matters for grading, right, is the margin, on the secondary market for people who are flipping cards. I totally get it. There's a huge faction out there of people who do not resell their cards and could care less about the label for resale value, right? So really what we wanted to do as collectors ourselves, right? Brad and I started as collectors. We were sick of, the options that were out there for grading, for lack of better words. And I feel confident saying this, I'm sorry that you haven't had the pleasure of having a slab in hand yet. I'm working on that. As you know, I have a shipping deficiency.
We're going to have to help you with that, because we're the premier shippers.
I know. And that's what I've heard. But I've got a fresh stack here, and I've got some cool stuff. But this product right here, in terms of clarity, in terms of durability, you can't crack these things. They're almost impossible to crack. It's just a really, really, really quality product that we know will stand the test of time, on the market. And it's just one of those things that it takes people like y'all, and it's going to take that network. Going back to that, it's going to take that network that Brad and I have built in the hobby, right, for people to say, okay, now I have a margin using DCI. I'm actually going to take $150 or $500 or whatever it is and allocate that to using DCI grading, right? And then I'm going to put the slabs in my case and run my business that way. And it's the same game, just at a different margin. And we hope that whether you're a collector or, somebody looking to resell, we know that there's options for you at DCI kind of down the line as the reputation grows, or now as just an encapsulation product, top of the line slab. And so, we hope that all it really takes is dealers and our network kind of putting that stuff out there. And over time, I think the clarity, the quality of the product, the turnaround time, and like you said, it's just a competition of who can do it best, who can do it fastest, who can do everything like that cheapest, and while maintaining, quality. And that's something that I think, we're going to continue to do moving forward.
I hope people that are listening who are maybe not as experienced, there's something that you've said and I've said multiple times, and it's margin. And because people are influenced by social media and they see 4 and 5 figure cards, and you think, you just buy 5 figure card, you turn around and sell it to the next guy, and you just make money. And that's in reality, it's cool to post a big card. It's cool to have it, but there's a very specific buyer when you start to get to those price points. And what we have found after many years of trying, and we've tried everything. That's kind of how Hobby Night School started. It's like, hey, we're going to try it. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to share what we liked, what we didn't like. And so, like, and I'm a systems and process guy. The thing is the margin, man. If I can buy, and that's why there was a point in time where SGC made all the sense in the world, because guess what? I could get my cards back, sell them, get that money, buy more cards, grade, get them back, sell them 3 times over before I'd get my cards back from PSA.
Well, and a lot of times by the time we get our cards back from PSA, they weren't worth what they were, had they come back in a reasonable amount of time.
And I think whether it's Peter from SGC, who the hell knows who's the spokesperson for BGS, Jason, I know Jason Kuntz. Yep. They'll be quick to tell you that there's certain cards that I would not grade with our company or with a certain company, and here's why. And I think you'd be the same. Like if we had let's say a 5-figure card, as much as you'd love to have it, and from like a marketing perspective,
for sure.
Hey, if that's thick stock, you probably want to go to BGS. If it's this, go to PSA. If it's vintage baseball, go to SGC.
Yeah. I've actually leaned into using different grading companies for my PC. And because first of all, I like trying other companies. And second of all, that's a good way. I know I'm not going to sell this card, so the margin doesn't matter. And then I can try and see if I like these other companies. I like the way their slabs look. I can put them out, in my showcases, and people are like, oh, I haven't seen that company before. Like, I've done it a bunch of times. And just having something that people haven't seen before in our showcase is enough to get people talking about it. And I'm like, well, it's not for sale. I just wanted you to see. Like, I was just showing it off. I actually ended up selling a couple PC cards, ones that I know I can get back, in slabs that were not, one of the big 3, because people are like, wow, this looks really cool. I've never seen this. I want to check it out. I really like the card. A lot of people still buy the card, not the slab. A lot of people still do that. And having a company like DCI, where people recognize you from your raw card review already, they're like, okay, well, this is a 10, and we know that they do a good job reviewing cards, so I feel comfortable buying this card.
Right.
That's just, I don't know. I a card in a DCI slab, I would be like, yeah, I'll definitely buy that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I say, I did say I encourage people to hey, come try DCI. I want to kind of touch on what Jeremy said a little bit though, in if you've ever been to a show where DCI is set up, whether I'm there or not, you will never find a DCI employee that will tell you that all of your cards are best suited for DCI slabs, if that makes sense. When you come up to the table and you have questions, it's better for us to answer them 1,000 times over, because I don't really give a shit about your $10, if I'm being honest. I don't really need it. So I want to see you win, because I want you to come back and drop off 100 cards, because I need your $1,000. You know what I mean? That's how I'm going to pay my bills. You know what I mean? It's not your one card order. It's the bulk submissions and the breakers and all that business is what I want. You know what I mean? And I really don't care. Again, if you have a $10,000, you pulled the Black Prism from Select, XRC, whatever it is, brand new product, it needs to go to PSA. It needs to go to PSA. And if it is a thick card, it probably needs to go to Beckett. And I'll be the first person to tell you that. And I think something that's kind of set us apart from other grading companies the last couple of years is the presence at shows, or just again, Brad and I were in the hobby, everybody we've hired comes from the hobby, whether it's from Twitter, family, friends, things like that, collectors, friends, kids, blah, blah, blah. But we need the hobby to exist for DCI to exist. Right. And so to do bad business up front for, $30 slab on site, or a one card, just so that we could take a picture and put it on social media, doesn't do us any good. We get great cards from our customers regardless. You know what I mean? So there's no reason for me to change a grade to market a bigger card or bump. We always grade accuracy. I'm never going to steer you in the wrong direction, because you know what, if I put these slabs on eBay, right? Like this is a personal submission. And I don't grade my own cards, but you can see here I got a 7 on my Skybox Metal Bryson DeChambeau. DCI 7, right? So I could easily crack that out and sell it raw. I'm not going to, because I want there to be DCI. Like from that standpoint, I want there to be DCI cards and like slabs on the market, right? I don't care if it's a 7, if the comp sells for less than raw, right? That is irrelevant because the condition's poor. But what I want, if that happens, is I want this person to get the card. I want them to crack it out, and I want them to see that the card warranted getting a 7, right? I don't want them to crack it out, send it to PSA, and have it come back a 9 or a 10, right? Because that hurts us. It also hurts our customers, right? So grading things accurately to their condition has really allowed us to enhance that reputation to where, you know, at one point, almost 45% of DCI 9s were getting PSA 10s, which just means that, you know, like on the centering, they were a little more lenient than we were. And so it was one of those things where, you know, there was a really unique buying opportunity for people to go out and buy DCI 9 RCRs, you know, above raw comp, because of the, you know, the expert review and the product, but send off to PSA and still get a 9 or sometimes even a gem and really make some money. So the condition is really what, like in the grading accuracy, is what we're most proud of, and like how we built that reputation. And then, you know, like everything else kind of comes with that, you know.
I'm in a group chat with some prominent folks in the hobby who are highly opinionated and very critical of damn near everything.
You can just say Cage Lawyer. I know him too.
And so they were talking about raw card reviews recently at Dallas, and some folks had gone through and gotten some 9.5s from BGS, and when they actually got them graded, they came back 8, 8.5, 9, and there was an incredible level of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have started using RCRs when available at big shows, either to ensure that we're not buying a counterfeit autograph,
sure,
or to, you know, like, hey, let's, you know, like maybe we're not like really negotiating, but we're trying to find a fair value, and
100%.
like we're kind of discussing condition. And so we've utilized that. And I hope more people understand, like, hey, it might be a little cost on the front end, but the amount of money it will save you or yield you in the result of an ROI is substantial. But for anybody that's like listening and they're like even considering giving DCI a chance, let's just take like a super liquid card right now. Let's say like a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence, like Optic Hobble or
Sure.
Prism Silver.
Yep.
What is the difference between raw, DCI 10, PSA 10?
Man, off the top of my head, it's okay. So
I mean, you can pick any card that you want, just to give somebody an idea. Like, are you guys at 50% of a 10, 75% of a 10 on average? Like,
so this is really the way that we look at it and try to market it. It isn't to again, it's not to compare to PSA, right? It's almost a completely different ballgame. What we really want collectors or our customer base to focus on is, you know, if this card here is $10 raw, I've got a Michael Harris blue speckle heritage refractor. We want you to, you know, you should be getting 40% above raw comps for that, you know, anywhere between 40 and 70 between, you know, percent of raw comps for that DCI 10. Now, obviously, depending on the card, that's going to vary, right? Like it's on a card by card basis. It can be all over the place. And something that we're really trying to like nail down is that, okay, even if you get a 9, like what is the percentage of, you know, because it's a $12 per card flat fee, 10-day business turnaround for anybody listening, $12 a card. What is the, you know, percent increase above raw that you would see for a 9 in this case? Because we see if there's a margin there, then you're really good, you know, on the market with a DCI 10. And so what we really like to do is compare to raw, right? Which obviously comes from our RCR background. I still think people who are unfamiliar with the, you know, pop-up grading companies, if you will. The people who kind of get to know DCI quickly realize the difference between us and the other ones that may be out there. But building that value off of a raw comp first until there's enough out there for us to really say, hey, okay, now we are bringing consistently, 75% of a BGS 9.5, 80%, whatever it is, or 70% of a PSA 10, 65%, wherever we are now. And just kind of say, okay, across the board, not necessarily card specific, set specific, because we do really see we get more Jordans in than anybody, like probably, PSA and then us, like we get a shitload of Jordans in, pardon my language, but we, that's a card that people are killing on that card right now with DCI, even in like a 5, you know what I mean? Just because it is graded and people trust that, and like that card is so wild, well faked and all that. So it's one of those things where card by card, it's much higher than, what I'd like, where it's much higher than raw comps, you know what I mean? But I don't know necessarily a number to say like across the board.
No, I guess the way I'm looking, I'm always like, well, how can I make money?
Yeah.
Leveraging the services that are available. And
right.
So I think we're all in agreement. Nobody's going to take at this point in time
100%.
a massive card and send it to anybody outside of PSA or vintage baseball. SGC is probably in the conversation, right?
Right.
But let's say I have a show coming up in 3 weeks. I've got a bunch of low to mid-tier cards. You're at $12 a card, 10-day turnaround. And as long as I'm sending in good condition cards,
you're going to crush.
If I can spend 100 and then sell for 140, that's pretty sexy. Rinse and repeat that a few times, and all of a sudden that bankroll grows and grows and grows.
Sort of like Jason buying 5-cent cards and selling them for $1. It shows,
It's not sexy, but it'll pay the bills over time.
Exactly.
And that's how you grow and scale your business.
And the more people doing that, the bigger DCI keeps growing. So I like that mindset of you don't have to be PSA. We're
not trying to be. Yeah.
So in all honesty, you're doing your own thing. And I actually genuinely appreciate that take on it. I feel like it's, you see a lot of you were talking about pop-up grading companies, and they're their whole marketing scheme is talking about how bad the other grading companies are.
And I don't want you to get me wrong. I don't want you to think hey, if you want to grade cards and make money, you can't send your shit to DCI. That's not it at all. I want every card. I want your big cards. I want your golds. I want to market stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just not there yet. You know what I mean? 5 years from now, I think it will be. And I'll work extremely hard to make sure it is. But it's one of those things where, if you people are in, you never know what people are into their cards for, right? Say you pull a $10,000 card, and obviously you're going to send it, you got it in a cheap break spot. I want you to maximize your money. I want you to send it off, you know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. But if you overpaid for a raw Jordan, you know what I mean? And it's got a crease and you didn't realize it, but it's real. It's a real Jordan. You know what I mean? There are options out there for you to not pay $1,000 to get it graded. You know what I mean? And still have a nice encapsulated, authentic, Fleer Jordan graded by a reputable company. And it's going to cost you $12 and it'll take you 10. You know what I mean? There are great options out there. I want all those cards. And I wish to this day, I wish I could say, hey, we're right in line with PSA, but that's not the reality, right? They've been around 30 years. We've been around for 4, and it's just a matter of time. So,
what are some cards that you won't grade? A lot of these companies,
yes,
they get themselves into some trouble because they're grading everything that comes across their path. And now there's a lot of newer companies that will only grade ultra modern, or they'll only grade this. What are some things what is your, you're talking about Jordan, that's, that's a very highly faked card. That's when we've seen some of these new grading companies grade and they were wrong. hell, we've seen the big companies grade them wrong.
Right.
So what are your guys' standards? What are like things where you're like, yeah, I'm not touching this or whatever, just out of curiosity?
So right now, the only thing that limits us is the slab size, is the size of our holder, right? And so we can't do any thick cards, no matter if it's from 1900 or, the year 3000. Like I can't do anything that's thicker than a standard chrome card or like a 70 point, like a kaboom. And that's just because we have a holder right now that we tried to get to fit as our first iteration the most cards on the market in one fail swoop, right? Those the molds are extremely expensive. It's a huge undertaking to like get all the plastics and all that. And so right now we can't do anything that's like a miniature card, an undersized, like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Yu-Gi-Oh is a little bit smaller than Pokemon. We can do Pokemon cards and like MetaZoo, most TCG. We can't do the oversized, like some of the oversized vintage stuff. So basically anything that is a 3.5 by 2.5 size, standard size card, we will be able to encapsulate for you. Something we do just for all of our customers though, is if you're not sure, we will RCR anything that doesn't fit in our holder and send you a credit, like send you the difference between the two services, right? So you're always going to, no matter what you send in, you're always going to get a grade or, a review of some kind, whether it comes back authentic or graded or blah, blah, blah. Depending on our holders, we will try to encapsulate everything for you. And then anything that may be oversized or undersized or too thick, things like that, we do have other options for. And we just credit our customers. Yeah, too thick. That's exactly right.
Nice. I paid him $10 to sneak that in there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, it's my understanding if you pay him $10, he'll do anything.
This is what I heard. I heard $10, no integrity. Those are words I heard in this.
That wouldn't be surprising. You guys do hang out on Twitter a lot.
Not me.
Let me ask you this. Does DCI have an official position when it comes to some of the stuff you're seeing with like Kurt's Card Care or Mr. Minty and some of this stuff where it's a real gray area for some folks. It's black and white, but
yeah, that was the first thing I thought. Like you were talking about your 7 getting cracked out and getting a 9, but what if it was like messed with before it went? You know?
And so that's something. So again, I sit and look at cards all day long, right? I don't use anything on my personal cards. It's just a personal preference. We get tons of cards in that are completely untouched. They got fingerprints all over them, dirt, like crap you can't even imagine, right? They're gross. That reminds me, just if anybody's listening and you're thinking about submitting, put your stuff in clean sleeves and top loaders because I'm sick of it getting all over my hands in my office. So yeah, clean top loaders, clean sleeves, and we're good to go. But anyways, we also get in cards that are like, people think they're slick and like trying to like put one, and it's like covered in like wax, and you're like, dude, like this is not even close to like the fact. And so what I do is I just wipe it off because I don't want them to get it encapsulated, crack it out, send it off to PSA, blah, 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 and have it just get ruined, right? Because it's, and they come back altered or something like that. And they'll be like, well, what, DCI graded it, blah, blah, blah. When people bring cards for RCR to shows, I tell them, like, I will wipe down with a microfiber every single card that comes into the office. I will be the one that does it. I will clean it. I will make sure you're good to go before we holder it. It's something I do from all of my cards. Like, it's no extra cost. That's what we do. But we do not add anything to the card or add or remove anything, if that makes sense. And that's kind of where I draw the line on that. I don't necessarily, in DCI, we don't necessarily have anything against it, right? I'm probably going to wipe it off if I can. And if it's something that's like obviously like recolored or stuff like that, then yeah, we have, the necessary guidelines and stuff like that in place. But all that's also available on our website, kind of like the grading scale, things like that. So if you want to kind of try to get a gauge before sending to DCI, that is public information on our website. Take it or leave it, in my opinion. People either do it and believe it gives them an advantage, or, people don't. and I get plenty of 10s and I never do it. So
I feel like sometimes it's just a matter of like wiping your damn fingerprints off of a card makes such a huge difference with the grading, you know?
for sure. How the card presents is a lot of the grade.
Yeah, it was when I was at PSA and we got locked in a room with a grader and them talking about like why a very slight dimple on one card makes it like an automatic, 6 or 7, but on this card was like a 9.5, a 9 or a 10. And just the thought process and the way that the card presents is it's pretty fascinating stuff.
It's very fun, and it's all completely subjective, but there is a general consensus. Mint is mint, gem mint is gem mint, near mint, and so on. So yeah, man, I think all that's public, and I think all that should continue to be public. I wish there was a little more cooperation between grading companies, especially with all of like the fakes and all that coming out. We don't hear anything from any grading company ever, and that's something that I know people at every one of those grading companies that I hear from, right? But never from like an official, official type deal. So, I wish the space, like you said, I wish it wasn't so like,
competitive.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But the competition.
We were at the Mint and they had all of a bunch of the grading companies sitting up like together, and that was one of the things. Like it wasn't necessarily all the grading companies. It was like a rep from Panini and Upper Deck and Tops, and then they had like CSG and BGS and PSA, and they were like, if you do something like with each of your companies, like to like make the hobby better, like cooperate, what would be the thing that you would do? And like one of them, I cannot remember, it was Sue's from CSG, was like the pop reports, because everybody's cracking and sending them, or they're crossing over, and if like it would be helpful like to the hobby as a whole to know stuff like that. Right. But for people, because we're getting really close to the end, and I really wanted to talk about your grading scale for anybody because that's such a huge topic with like PSA not having 9.5s and all of the craziness with Beckett while we were at the Mint, with like dropping their new grading scale and then walking it back, and subgrades and everything. Why don't you just for like like a minute kind of explain what DSI's grading scale looks like? DCI, sorry. I'm dyslexic, so
it's okay. So yeah,
those softballs. That's my wife, and she can get it too. Step your game up.
That's exactly right. She's like, "What's your name, Jeremy?" Like, yeah. All right. So I will just say we grade with whole grades. This is something that when we were trying to come up with that grading scale, right? Like we feel confident enough to assign a full grade, or distinguish between the different mint, near mint, gem mint. We feel like a 0.5 grade kind of is a marketing play for that pop report, and kind of the grading company's way of manipulating the market, which they really should have no control over or interest in any way, right? Because they're not the ones producing the cards as the manufacturer. And obviously people collect outside of their jobs, and it is something that we deal with, but that is something that we feel confident in, right? And that's going to allow us to, put my name behind the label and the grade that we assign, is that like, hey, we grade it true to condition, based on our scale. And we feel like we do it well enough to not, kind of leave you a gray area in between each of our designated grades. I will talk about something quickly that we added recently. That is a full authentication service. We have an authentication team now that is top of the line. They are able to argue in court, based on their certifications and authenticity and things like that. And so that's something that, again, allows us just to continue to build credibility and reputability moving forward. And that's something that you can do in-person autos, baseballs, basketballs, jerseys, pictures, whatever. It doesn't have to be a card. That's available. It's just something that we do as well now. that we don't necessarily market as much, but it's something that we see that plays a huge role in our grading that can also be added as kind of like an additional service, like a JSA or something at a show, just to kind of provide, legitimate authentication. Again, another option for that.
Is that service like typically when, like at Dallas, are they set up at Dallas? Because that's one thing that I see at local shows around us is when JSA sets up, from the hour before the show starts until an hour after it ends, there's a line of people getting their memorabilia authenticated.
Yep. We do. Yeah. So we set up there. Usually you can come right up to the DCI booth and drop everything off. We typically don't have them in the same tented area just because it gets a little tight in there. But yeah, they're always with us at shows, or for the most part. And if we're not at a show, you can always mail it to the office if you want to mail your item in. Otherwise, we will try to get to a show near you if you're hesitant about the mail.
That's awesome.
So we need to, like, in fairness to Jason, this episode was supposed to happen about 3 weeks ago. That was the week when the death flu ran through our entire house. So like, if you catch the end of the first episode with Sports Card Dad, you hear like the kids like, Lala's puking everywhere. Blew up the whole week. Like, Tom C got pushed. Like, it just blew it up. So we appreciate you being patient as we get back into a good rhythm over here. But I definitely would love to do another episode where we just talk about, like, I don't want to call it like making money, but like how you can be profitable in different like unique ways that you can operate in the space that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And, like, I feel like we could lay it out in a way where if you're a novice or somebody newer, you're going to look at it and be like, oh, wow,
I hadn't even considered this or something.
Oh, yeah. Or like what they're saying is
a lot of people follow so many people that are like doing these big, huge deals. And I went to a show and I spent $35,000. Like, that's not what everybody's experience. That's not our experience.
That's the 1% of the hobby.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like there's not enough people talking about really what it's like to be in this space and be profitable, but not be, making these insane, 5-figure deals every weekend, because that's just not what the space is for the majority of people. And your start selling dollar boxes and nickel boxes places, that is truly what most people are doing in this space.
For sure. And that's I have a lot of thoughts on that. I would love to come back on. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we cut through all, we don't have to pretend to be nice. We don't have to talk about, anything, get into it, because two things that you said today that resonated is like during COVID when everything was shut down and everybody's like, you can't make money. Everywhere I heard is like, you can't make money. And I'm like, well, why can't you? And so we found a niche where we would have, I'm not lying, we'd have like 6 or 7 like computers, phones up, and we'd get in the queue for HGA. And that's awesome. Found that like colorful mid-tier soccer cards would move like crazy because soccer, like the popularity of soccer cards was like rising. So it was like a younger audience, and so they're not beholden to any grading company. You've got this cool looking slab, sometimes it's personalized, and we would, like, everybody's saying it can't be done. We're flipping soccer cards. I'm buying them for $5, $10, $15, buying them in bulk from people who don't care to collect soccer, getting them graded, turning around and flipping them. The other thing you said that really resonated with me was the not trying to haggle. If I understand that there's like, like Dave from Extraordinary Cards, his thing is like, it's hard to price your cards all the time, and inevitably people are going to try to lowball you. So whatever's on the slab doesn't even matter. There's going to be a negotiation.
Right.
So when we were in Chicago in March for the Spectacular, our whole thing is we buy in the off season. We try to buy in bulk, and that way we try to buy the right brands of the right players, or players that we think there's going to be a buzz, and then try to get out before the season ever starts. So March, everybody's getting ready, gearing up for playoff basketball. We're like, hey, we're going after Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And it just so happened that this offseason, it worked out well. But we believed in the cycle enough that people that were 90, 95, 100, 105, 110 paid it paid it. And people are like, oh, you're crazy. That's dumb, yada, yada, yada. So I bought a Justin Fields cracked ice for $400.
Jersey number 1 of 22.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I saw it.
Yeah. So
I saw it.
So we sold it on eBay today for just under $1,200.
It's awesome.
And it's not like a brag about like that's
No.
cool. That's sweet when it happens. But the thing is, like, we had a system, we had a process, we brought the right card of the right player, we stuck to it, and you could see the buzz building. Went back and forth, a couple offers on eBay. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get greedy. We're not going to let this thing fall apart. That's almost a 3x on your money. Let's get out and move on.
And the best thing is, Justin Fields didn't play a game in between when you bought the card and when you sold it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
The second he starts playing games is when you're losing the market at that point. You have to sell him
100%.
before he plays a game.
Unless you're Jalen Hurts last year, where you start off like 3-0, 4-0, 5-0.
Yes.
Yeah.
His market was
So
crazy.
that was crazy. There's always exceptions, right? But I would love to come back on. Like I kind of said at the beginning, you guys have always supported us, and I'm happy to support you guys in whatever content. I do get a kick out of
you guys
the coffee back and forth on Twitter.
Yeah.
I do. That is so wild because I've got people I don't even know who are just like,
Yeah.
I feel like Jeremy this morning. I just get
Yo.
or like, sometimes you're busy and you're like, what the hell is this? Who is this? And it's like a picture of coffee. And you have like that moment of like, what the hell is this? Like, oh
yeah. Okay, I'm that guy now. Yeah.
It makes me laugh so much.
I love it.
It's become such. We'll be like every time we buy coffee, he's like, "Hey, take a picture of my coffee." You're
I
such a
feel like cheating. There's like we opened cards today. We bought a lot off of Vadim, and we didn't record it. However, if it's like coffee, I feel like, damn, I didn't get my coffee picture. I got to run back. I'll go buy another Starbucks just so I can get my pick.
That's
he's
exactly right.
not lying. He's not lying.
You can't reuse it either because there's the date on the sticker.
Yeah.
That's why I always show the sticker. So that
That's
way
right.
it's anything.
Fresh.
I always
Exactly.
like, oh, shit. Let me turn it. There you go.
I know. I took a picture one day. He's
Right.
like, "No, you got to take this picture
Fresh.
again because you didn't show the sticker." I'm like,
I see how the hobby acts. I don't want to come to me saying I'm on some bullshit when it comes to my coffee.
Absolutely. They'd be like, "Oh, you didn't show the sticker. That's our old picture. Screw this guy."
Jason, where can the fine folks follow you? And I hope you burn that shirt when it's all said.
I will work on getting a Reckless Cards t-shirt or jersey maybe.
Yep.
You can follow me at Jason Dardick on Twitter, at not Jason Dardick on Instagram. The easiest way to find me is probably just at DCI Grading and go from there across all social medias. Thank you all guys so much for having me on. It's a pleasure, and you guys are awesome. I can't wait to see you at the National.
we're excited. We'll see you then. Thanks everyone for joining us, and until next time, make good choices. Bye.